Thanks, Aldrin. Former Secret Services head Mo Shaik says former President Jacob Zuma failed in his constitutional obligation to direct the intelligence unit. He says Zuma's relationship with the Guptas resulted in him blocking a probe into the family. Shaik testified at the State Capture Commission of Inquiry. Former National Intelligence boss Gibson Njenje also took the stand, confirming claims that Zuma stopped the investigation. Our reporter Manqoba Mchunu was there. Manqoba, so let's just start with that. We have Mo Shaik accusing the former president of basically being more loyal to the Gupta family than to his role as head of state.
And that's a very serious allegation that he makes there, because the president takes an oath, you recall, when he comes into office, that he'll be faithful to the republic. And of course here what Mo Shaik is saying is that President Zuma was more loyal to the Gupta family than South Africans. So he's saying that, in his previous relationship, even quoting a relationship with his brother, Schabir Shaik, saying that, from the relationship with Schabir Shaik, what has been evidence in President Zuma's behavior is that he has been loyal to his friends despite the embarrassment that they cause him. And this is the case, he says, with the Guptas. Despite all the noise, despite all the controversy around the Guptas, he says that Zuma chose to be loyal and was loyal to the Guptas. And he believes that this is the reason why he then blocked that investigation into the Gupta family. And of course, he says he battled to separate personal from constitutional obligations. Let's take a listen, please.
There came a point in his administration where he could not separate, even in his state of mind, the personal relationship with the Guptas from his responsibility as the head of the national executive with certain constitutional obligations and requirements. All things started to be seen through the same prism and created enormous complications.
And those complications, including Mo Shaik, including Gibson Njenje and another colleague's insistence that there was a case to be made for an investigation into the Gupta family, finally led to his sacking. Is that correct?
Well, it ultimately cost them their jobs, because at the end they say that there was such a breakdown in relationship, irreversible breakdown in relationship between themselves and the minister who they reported to. And they say that also the fact that the president himself had no faith or trust in them was simply meaning that, there was no point in continuing. He says that, of course, they had to resign as a result of that. And he believes that he was pushed out of that department for initiating that probe into the Guptas. And he says, of course, that he was later offered a post of ambassadorship to Japan by Minister Cwele, which he says was constitutionally wrong. But he says this was all part of an orchestrated plan to push them out of the department. Let's take a listen.
If I look at all the possible significant causes, I would have to conclude that being party to the decision to investigate the Guptas was the significant cause. Everything that resulted from that moment was as a consequence of that, because I think the trust levels were invariably broken around that level.
So let's talk about the role of Siyabonga Cwele. He played an active role, according to Mo Shaik, in preventing any overtures or any efforts to ensure that there's an investigation. Does he make a linkage between him and the Gupta family?
Well, interestingly, he mentioned that because Gibson Njenje, when he was giving testimony, he alluded to the fact that, at a meeting, at one of the meetings he held with AJ Gupta in 2011, AJ Gupta, of course, the meeting was over the allegations that were there at the time, and allegations that the Guptas had influence on the former President Jacob Zuma. He says that AJ Gupta had asked him that what really is the issue with Minister Cwele and trying to make contact or trying to be friends with this family. Do you know if there's any reason why he's trying so hard to be close to this family? So there was that point that Minister Cwele was trying by all means to be close to the Gupta family. But despite that, what also emerged is that, from his interference with the investigations, it was clear that Minister Cwele was simply trying to protect the then president, former President Jacob Zuma, who he was a close ally of at the time.
All right, thanks a lot, Manqoba Mchunu, SABC news reporter that's on that story of state capture.